Hello and welcome back to another video in this series where we watch every single Best Picture winner. My plan originally was to watch every single Best Picture winner until the next Oscars, but I kind of only just realised that the next Oscars are going to be in March, and I'm only on like film 22 out of 94, so it's not happening, I'm going to be honest, but I'm going to carry on making these videos. And today we'll be talking about the last 5 years of the 1940s. If you didn't watch my last video on the first 5 years of the 1940s, then you can watch them by clicking here or here, one of the two. Overall, these 5 years have been better than the last 5, I'd say. 3 of them have been actually pretty good, and 2 of them just not so much. But anyway, I'll get into that in due course. Let's start off with the 18th Academy Awards. So the 18th Academy Awards were held on the 7th of March 1946 by Bob Hope, who has hosted pretty much every single award, but also one of my favourite actors from this period, James Stewart. James Stewart has already appeared in one of the Best Pictures winners that we've covered, which was You Can't Take It With You. That took me a while to remember what it was actually called. And he does appear in a future one called The Greatest Show on Earth, which I just finished watching, and oh my lord is it dull. We'll get onto that another video though. Even though it's one of the dullest, because it's so long, I do have a lot to say about it, so I'm excited to get to that. Joan Crawford was nominated for Best Actress, but was so sure that she wouldn't win that she just didn't attend the award. She said it was because she had pneumonia, and although it's never actually confirmed, people think she was just there because she didn't think she'd win. However, she did, and the Oscar was actually mailed to her when she was in bed later that night, which is brilliant. The Bells of St. Mary became the first sequel to be nominated for a Best Picture, even though it didn't win. But most importantly, this was the first Academy Awards after the end of the Second World War, and the mood of the whole evening was mostly celebratory and positive. They used bronze statuettes with gold engravings rather than the plaster ones they used during the war, and the whole evening was a banquet and a lavish event like it used to be rather than what it became during the Second World War. So what better film is there to initiate this amazing celebratory time of hope than a anti-alcohol PSA and one of the most depressing films ever made by Billy Wilder? The winner was The Lost Weekend. This is actually one that I haven't watched within the context of this challenge because I watched it not too long ago, because I love Billy Wilder. Billy Wilder is one of my favourite directors of all time and writers, and this is one of his earlier efforts and his first kind of breakthrough one. In my opinion, this is also his most experimental film. The way it plays with structure and narrative, as well as just the cinematography and everything, is very avant-garde, and unlike his usual very simply shot comedies, or even if it's not a comedy, it would still just be a very fast-paced, simple, linear structure film. You know, it'll be like a movie. You know, the film, it'll be like a movie. Like a movie. It
feels like a real, like, you know, go to the theatre film movie.
Whereas this feels more like a film, like a piece of experimental media. And I loved it. It was extremely bold for its time, critiquing American society and their alcohol problem, which is something no other films are really facing. And although today there are loads of films... Oh. Hey. You alright? Do you want to get in there? Oh. Thanks. Thanks. Okay, my cat has just destroyed all of my notes. And although many films today deal with that subject of alcoholism and addiction, this film was kind of devoid of all cliches because it was doing it for the first time. Framuland is the main character and protagonist who goes through the alcohol problems, who does a fantastic job at really building pathos for the character. Although at certain times I could have sworn he was James Stewart, just from certain angles. I would say my one critique is that the acting feels very theatrical. It doesn't really feel like it was screen acting, it feels like it was stage acting. And that could be chalked up to the fact that this was one of Billy Wilder's first directing jobs, whereas previously he'd just written. But even then, once you kind of get over how theatrical it is, you still enjoy it and still sympathise with the characters, and all the actors do a fantastic job. They deserve the Oscar. Absolutely. The 19th Academy Awards were held on the 13th of March 1947 by Jack Benny. There was an honorary award to Harold Russell, who was a veteran from World War II who had lost both his hands. So he starred in a World War II film called Best Years of Our Lives, and he played a character who lost both his arms during the war, as he did. He felt that given that he was a non-actor and this was his only credit, that he would not at all win the award. So they gave him an honorary award for inspiring other veterans that feel like they can't make it in the normal world after World War II. However, he would still go on to win Best Actor, which is fantastic, and he does a great job in the film. I do think a medal might have been a slightly more appropriate award for someone with no hands, and that's it. It was a very boring award show. The winner was Best years of our lives. As I mentioned, Harold Russell was in this film, and the film is about veterans after World War II, kind of trying to normalise in society after going through such an inhuman experience for 6 years of your life. And the way it captures it is perfect. It begins with 3 returning soldiers who had never met before going on a plane home, and they talk about life, about what they're going to do when they get back, how excited they are. But when they go back, it's extremely bittersweet. They retain so much shell shock from the experience, and in general find it hard to talk to their family after they haven't seen them for 6 years, even their daughters or their wives. It's about 2.5 hours long, and the first hour is quite tough to get through. Not in a bad way, I mean as in how emotional and raw it is. You really, really feel for these veterans who have had to go through so much horrible things for the last 6 years, and when they return they can't even be free and happy because, you know, their wives have moved on, or they're still in an unhappy relationship, or their kids don't recognize them, or their kids are 7 years old and they know nothing about them. It's extremely depressing and really forces you to think about these problems people had to go through so many years ago now. However, the feeling that it has at the end is about hope, as demonstrated by Harold Russell's inspiring achievement of becoming an actor despite losing both his hands. The whole film plays out like a melodrama with many different soap opera sort of stories happening and love stories, but also just human moments even within and without relationships that will inspire you even today, even though it doesn't apply to me in any way. I haven't been through a war. It did drag occasionally, as I said, it's 2.5 hours long, and towards the end I'd say the last half an hour it could have been shorter. Visually it is fantastic. Actually, wait. I forgot to mention this is the only one out of the 5 films I'm going to cover today that I have on DVD. See that? Oh. There you go. Also, last time I put all these up and I was going to get Chicago down, I accidentally pushed it and that was falling behind my bed. So yeah, I'm never watching that film again. Given that it's an inspirational film about coming out of World War II, I do think it would have been a slightly more appropriate film for the last Oscars rather than the extremely depressing film The Lost Weekend. But it was released when it was released and it won Best Picture and it deserved it. That sentence was not formed before I said it. The 20th Academy Awards were held on the 20th of March 1948 by Agnes Moorehead and Dick Powell, and not the one from Gavin and Stacey.
Sausage. Ah, no, that's definitely sausage. Sausage, I know, is sausage.
James Baskett won an acting award for Song of the South, which would make him both the first African-American man to win an Oscar for acting, and also the first actor to win an Oscar from a Disney film. So what an accomplished man. Again, that's the only thing worth noting that happened that year. Another really boring Oscars. However, the winner was also kind of boring. Gentleman's Agreement. We're going so well with 2 fantastic films, and this film breaks a spell. It's by no means bad at all, but I can see how this isn't some sort of classic film that's always been a must-watch. In fact, I never would have seen it if it wasn't for this challenge, and I'm glad I did. I'd never watch it again, but it's decent. The premise of it is fantastic. It's about a journalist who gets told to do a piece on anti-Semitism. And at first, I think the most interesting conversation it puts on the table is about how the journalist really wants to avoid doing the job. Although anti-Semitism is such an important issue, it was still such a major thing that he might have got a lot of hate for doing it. His family didn't want him to do it and put himself through that. But soon, when he saw the effects firsthand, he felt the need to write about it and do it in a fantastic way, which is pretending he was Jewish. This way, not unlike Black Klansman, he could go to anti-Semites and have a conversation with them and see how they act around him. He could also experience firsthand what they go through and write about that as a passionate thing in his writing. And for the first half an hour, I really wanted to love this film, but I kind of gave up and just thought, it's not great. In fact, it got progressively worse and worse and kind of lost touch with its subject. But just for the premise, for what it puts on the table, as well as for the year it was released, it's a very progressive film, but also a film that got progressively worse. It's good, but it doesn't deserve the Oscar for Best Picture. That said, looking through the films released in 1947 that I've seen, there aren't many fantastic ones, but I did manage to find one that I love, and that film is, and very amped because tomorrow is going to be the 1st of December, Miracle on 34th Street, which is a film I adore. It's also the kind of film I could imagine winning Best Picture. So yeah, I'd pick that over Gentleman's Agreement, but still, it's a fine, if you want to watch it, I'm not going to object, but I wouldn't recommend it. The 21st Academy Awards were held on the 24th of March by Robert Montgomery. Best costume design was introduced, and just like with best cinematography and set decoration, it was split into specifically best costume design in a colour film and best costume design in a black and white film. Which actually makes a lot of sense because designing costume for colour films will always look better, so it's good to honour both, I suppose. John Hudson directed... Hello. Don't destroy him. John Hudson directed his father Walter Hudson in a film and actually directed him into an Oscar, which is so cool. If my son doesn't direct me in a film that wins an Oscar, then I don't even want to keep him. Speaking on the colour of black and white and colour films, this Best Picture winner is one that benefits so much from being black and white, and that is Laurence Oliver's Hamlet. I don't usually, but I said Laurence Oliver's Hamlet because obviously Hamlet is a tale that has had so many different adaptations, and this is the only one that I've seen. Also my first kind of full exposure to the story. I've only heard it in glimpses before. And obviously the "to be or not to be" quote, which is so unbelievably famous. In fact, that moment was so well directed. It's on a cliff face, and the way Laurence Oliver delivers it and the cinematography.
To be or not to be.
This was the first non-Hollywood Best Picture winner, and I think the first British one. Laurence Oliver was the first person to win an Oscar for Best Acting in a film that he directed. So that is one of the only times where you can fully take credit for that Oscar, because obviously a big part of an actor's great performance is how the director directed them. So to win an Oscar for Best Acting in a film that you directed, that's like all on you. Although I'm not usually snooty to long and sophisticatedly written films like this one, it took me a while to kind of get the courage to watch this, because it's a 2.5 hour Shakespeare adaptation. Like, that is not a casual watch. However, what I found on the other side was actually a fantastic film. And although I do admit it is a bit longer than it should be, I was entertained pretty much the whole time. The cinematography was second to none. In fact, I'd say it's the best cinematography of the Best Picture winners that I've talked about so far. Yet it wasn't even nominated for an Oscar itself, the cinematography, which is a crime. There were honestly so many great tracking shots that would go from point A to point B in the castle in the most convoluted but beautiful to look at ways. Every other department that goes into making a film was done flawlessly, including the music and performances. My issues kind of just come with the original Shakespeare tale as a whole, which is a shame. Although I haven't read the play and I haven't seen any other adaptation, I do have a problem with Shakespeare where he'll find some sort of storyline that is really compelling and really interesting and really dynamic, and then just shift away from that and constantly go, oh no, look at this, the king and his daughter are doing this, so there's a romance going on here that's really boring and distracting. I don't know why he can't just keep it simple. There's no point me critiquing Shakespeare. I mean, he died so many years ago. He's made so many plays, the most beloved, amazing writer. It's not like he's going to watch this video and change when he makes his next one. I just have an issue with his writing. Same as Macbeth. There are some things in Macbeth I love, and then some parts that just make me want to fall asleep. And he combines them when I feel like, you know, you could just pick out the good bits and keep them. That's just me though. I know people obviously love Shakespeare, don't get offended. It's not an easy watch, but it's definitely a rewarding one, and if you're thinking of watching it, then I would recommend it. But when you've got 2.5 hours set aside, no distractions to watch it, because I did have to keep stopping and starting it, and that wasn't fun. Overall, Laurence Oliver deserved the award, and so did this film in general. Worthy winner. The 22nd Academy Awards were held on March 23rd, 1950 by Paul Douglas. This was the final year that all 5 Best Picture nominees were black and white, and also the first year where every single film nominated for Best Picture won other Oscars. Now, I know that after this year, so many other black and white films were being made, and wasn't really until the 60s that colour film was kind of winning in the ratio from black and white to coloured films. But it's a shame that this kind of starts to mark the death of black and white cinema. And obviously, great black and white films are being made today. But reading that news that this was the final year, I don't know, it made me kind of sad that this era is falling to an end, because some of the best films ever made are black and white. Some of the best cinematography, as I talked about with Hamlet, is in black and white. See, I think we should all take a moment of silence for black and white films. Okay. This was another kind of boring year where there wasn't much to say about it, but it happened. And the final winner of this video was All the King's Men. The premise of this film reminded me quite a lot of Citizen Kane It's all about a politician's rise to fame. Now, I know that Citizen Kane is much more than just a politician's rise to fame and is about how Charles Foster Kane did many remarkable things with his life. But also what makes Citizen Kane so brilliant is the way it's told and the structure and the way it's told through other people's accounts and the editing and everything like that. This had none of that and just kind of the story of a politician rising to fame, which is fine. You don't need to be avant-garde for a film to be great. You can tell a story straightforward, biopic-y like that, and it can be one of the best films. And that can be proven by the many great biopics that have taken that linear structure. But this was still a very boring film. I'd love to recap the plot in more detail, but honestly, I was just kind of off for this film, finding anything I can to play with, or play the guitar, or look at my phone. Even the poster is so dull. Look at that. Look, that's so boring. What does that even mean? So, ugh. I do admit I did quite like the ending. It was quite a compelling and well-directed scene where everyone started chanting the name of the politician to get him out of court. I completely forgot what happened in this film. It reminded me a bit of a previous Best Picture winner called The Life of Emile Zola, and similarly, that film also bored me quite a bit. It was mainly just to go, hey, look, how amazing is this person? But also, I kind of wasn't always sure who the politician we're supposed to focus on was. It's not like the film Malcolm X where Denzel Washington is on the film. I think it was something like 98% of the time he's in every single frame. This, I don't know, it kind of bounced towards so many people in a way that didn't feel cohesive to him. And then the ending kind of felt like, oh, this is all about him. And yeah, my opinion, didn't deserve Best Picture by any means. But, I don't know, it's not terrible. Some people like it. I'm not one of those people. Then again, I've never been the biggest fan of biopic. Yeah, those of you who hate Bohemian Rhapsody will not like All the King's Men. And that brings me to the end. Those are 5 years, 5 Best Picture winners in the bag. At the moment, I'm up to 1953, which is From Here to Eternity. I'll be doing that soon. And then On the Waterfront, which I've already seen, which is a fantastic film. So far, the 50s are looking good. Honestly, if this challenge to watch all these films has proven anything, it's that winning Best Picture really doesn't make you a classic. Like, so many of these films are just hidden gems, or just forgotten shit. Here's a ranking of all the Best Pictures that I've seen so far. Casablanca at the top, Cimarron at the bottom. And I'm glad to say that one of the films in this video is quite high, Best Years of Our Lives, which was just fantastic. So if you've taken anything from this, is watch Best Years of Our Lives, watch The Lost Weekend, watch Hamlet if you want to. It's not what I'm going to force on you, but if you're thinking about it, watch it. Don't bother with Gentleman's Agreement. Don't bother with All the King's Men. And even though lots of these films I really don't like, it's really hard to say this film doesn't deserve the Best Picture award because there are so many other factors that go into a film. The cultural impact of the time, how unique and new it was. I mean, some people don't like Citizen Kane, and you've just got to say to them, you know, everything that this film was doing, it was doing for the first time. I'm sorry, I keep rambling about the Citizen Kane, but I've recently rewatched it and I love it so much. I forgot how great it is. Watch Citizen Kane. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time for the first 5 years of the 50s. This is goodbye to the 40s with a terrible end, but overall, a more than fine decade.